gospel transforms our lives. Transforms them. It transforms the injustice to justice. It transforms people's lives in multiple religions into the faith in Jesus Christ that unites us all. It transforms sexuality and heals and redeems all things. So we're on either side, we are opting out of transformation. And so my first task in creating these places for transformation, these places will be outside the four walls of what people have come to recognize as church. Maybe in our homes, maybe in the local third space, whether it be McDonald's, a bar, a coffee shop, a Tim Hortons Donuts. But the church today, living, if we accept that we are in a minority situation, we should be willing to enter culture as missionaries and enter into these spaces and train people to be among and in conversations and be with these, whether it be people living in alternative sexualities, people in the midst of injustice, being victimized by injustice. We need to be with them. People of other faiths, we need to be with them. Secondly, we need to be humble and we need to be present in vulnerability and listen into these spaces. Listen, sit, eat. Luke chapter 10, be present. We need to know how to be comfortable just being in these places. It's the most liberating thing. I found it in my own life, the most liberating thing, to realize that God's at work and I can just be present and listen and chill and be. So last thing about these places, we must do it as part of our everyday life. We must not turn these spaces into programs. We must not somehow manufacture these spaces. Everybody, don't go don't go turning this into a program. Look at your people and look at their lives and look at the rhythms they're already living in and try to figure out how in integrity these habits can be cultivated where they're already at. That's where the collisions of the kingdom will happen. So it's not a program. So one of the things we do at our churches is we do a little inventory on people's lives. We sit down and we say, okay, what do you do from when you first get up in the morning? Well, I have breakfast, and then I get out of the house and try to get to my office early enough to grade paper. One I'm talking about, the person I have in mind right now is a school teacher. And I grade papers from 8 o'clock to 9:30. First class starts at 10 o'clock. Lunch break, I go eat with the faculty. Then get back to work by 1:30, and I have 2 more classes, and then I'm home. I leave, I have student conferences, and then I go home. And from 3:30 to 5, I prepare the next day's lessons plans, and then I sit down with my family at 5 o'clock. And then in the evening, I'm either watching TV or chilling or reading a book before I go to bed at 9:30. Okay, so that's the life. Okay, so here's what I would do, or here's what we would do. Okay, where do you grade your papers? I grade them in my office. Okay, here's a quick question. Within your, do you stop for coffee between the time you get up and the time you get to your office to grade papers? Yes. It's a little place called Brewed Awakening right in front of the railroad tracks. Oh, why don't you just buy the coffee there and stay there? Say 2 days out of the week, and just stay there and grade your papers. Just mind your own business, grade your papers, and just be aware of the people coming in and out, and the people are sitting there. People are going to work. Faculty, what do you do when you eat lunch with your faculty, other faculty people? Do they call? I guess they call high school faculty. Anyways. What do you know? He sits all by himself over there trying to catch. No, just grab that coffee and be present with your other teachers? What happens between 3:30 and 5? I'm real busy. I try to fit in at least one student mentor issue, and then I'm off to do. Well, God's already working. Oh, yes, God's working in those things. God's already working in them. And pretty soon we begin to see. And then one night a week, who's a neighbor that you have been waiting to get to know in your neighborhood? Well, right across the street. Actually, this is a true story. Right across the street, I've been getting to know this neighbor. And he's interested in my other friend's home brewing is a big thing in Chicago, and I hope it doesn't offend anybody. I'm not saying drinking alcohol is a good thing, especially if you're under the age of whatever it is here. But the case might be whatever this man liked. And so, instead of just going over to the person's house and tasting a beer, why don't you invite him? Now, already within his life, not changing really any of his routine, was the space to interact with what God was doing in the neighborhood. And you wouldn't believe some of the things that started to happen just by paying attention and being present to God's presence in those situations. And then there's a little group that meets down the street in the coffee shop, actually, at this bar. And their whole goal is, how do we minister to the 4 or 5 homeless people that hang out at the train station? You didn't have to start a program. It's already going. Why don't you just be present and bring Jesus to that situation? So, in order to create spaces, we need to, A, look for the spaces already in our lives and around our church's 4 walls where people's relationships are already happening. I was taking a walk. I'm in the process of buying a home. We moved, and we're moving to a new location where we have an incarnational community. They're developing 20 people with about 35, 40 kids, and we're all living there. And so one night, I took Colin Gordy. See, hockey players put either a Y or an I-E or sometimes an S at the end of a name. Gordy. Hey, Gordy. That means we love. In hockey language, me love you, Gordy, but this is how I express it. Gordy. So anyways, Keener. Oh, excuse me. Patrick Keener. Taser. Johnny Taser. So we have all this. You probably know this better than I if you're in the hockey culture. But anyways, Gordy and I take a walk through the neighborhood. And we're walking by this bar. And I'm thinking about the Eucharist, and I'm thinking about the table. And I'm just so amazed that when we at the table go into our neighborhoods, they're already trying to do the table. So we're walking by this bar, and this was very much on my mind. I said, Gordy, look at in there in that bar. This is like 2 blocks from where we gather. Look at those people. They're gathering. They're trying to connect. They're seriously being social. The table of our Lord. And all I said was, and forgive me if this sounds exclusivistic, and I can explain why it's not, but I won't right now. We'll do it tonight. I said, but there's no Jesus. I suspect there's no Jesus in that bar yet. That's where I can go. And so actually in the process of me buying this house, I started to fall in love with this bar called DJ's Sports Bar. I went in there just 3 or 4 times, and this is all part of me buying a house. Because I'm going to live here. In the kingdom, I'm going to seek out the kingdom here. And DJ's Sports Bar. Every Thursday night, because I got a load of papers to grade, and some of them are doctoral papers, and each doctoral paper takes at least 3 hours to grade. So you got this thing you got to fill out. Anyways, every Thursday night, I'm actually going to discern what night, but Thursday night is a good night for me. When I have 7-Up, and I'm going to sit there. I'm just going to be present. I'm actually just going to grade papers. That in and of itself will be weird. And people will say, who are you? Dave. Just moved into the neighborhood 3 blocks down. What do you do? I'm a professor. Before that, I was a financial services executive. Oh, wow. I'm just going to sit there. I tell you, that arena will be opened up. I will start to see things I didn't see before. I've seen this happen just by me hanging out in McDonald's for 5 years. So we need to create these spaces to engage and be present with the gospel. Not in our local churches, humble, listening, being present, and part of our everyday life. It'll be part of my everyday life because I just need a place to go, chill, and grade papers. And that's how we can train individuals, but it always turns into more. Because when I hang out, I always find out that there's 3 or 4 other Christians in the neighborhood that want to join with me and be part of something. And they'll want to go to DJ's sports bar with me once they find out how great it is. And that DJ's bar, in a sense, will become a church. McDonald's became a church for me. Crazy, I know, it's hard to believe. And McDonald's in the States is like Tim Horton Donuts in Canada, and at least in a lot of places. So just trying to help you connect. So we need to create these spaces. Now, time's running short. It's amazing how I can turn 5 pages of material into like a 20. Because I have one more question that I'd like us to break out and talk about. and this question is, just to prepare you. Where are you seeing these dynamics take shape? That was a very academic question. Where are you seeing these spaces take shape in your church? What are the hurdles that you face to create these spaces for your church? But here's some suggestions on how to create these spaces in relationship to the LGBTQ communities and the LGBTQ peoples around us, right? So, I've been developing a posture that I think churches should take in relationship to the mission that we are in when we are faced with the challenge of alternative sexualities. And there was this Canadian guy, his name was Stanley Grenz. He taught at Regent before he passed away suddenly. And he came up with these 2 phrases, welcoming and not affirming. He thought that, and I love Stanley. I never personally knew him, but I love his work. Okay, but in this one, I think he kind of created something which didn't work out, I think, the way he wanted it to. But he created this idea, welcoming and not affirming communities. We're going to welcome you, but we're not going to affirm you. And I understand what he was trying to do, and it was a good thing, but it didn't work. And then on the other side, so this became symbolic of the right side of the diagram from yesterday. Welcoming but not affirming. Over here, it became welcoming and affirming. And I felt that both of these, for all the reasons we just already discussed, were inadequate to engage mission. And so I suggested in a blog post, all of this stuff can be found if you're willing to sort it through in my blog, reclaimingthemission.com. I suggested welcoming and mutually transforming. I think we ought to create spaces that are welcoming and mutually transforming. I think that's the posture we must take to create these spaces. They must be welcoming spaces, mutually transforming. Mutual means I need to be transformed too. Mutual means I come not from a posture of power, but from a posture of humility, recognizing that I'm as broken as anyone. And that's why I come first and acknowledge my brokenness.